Hello, everybody, and welcome to part 2. Alright, so I decided to do a little bit of research since last time to double-check on a couple things. I will say this is still pretty much the same day as the first one, so if I ended up missing some stuff that people might have commented, I apologize. This is in the past! Anyway, so I went ahead and looked up the whole legend behind Brahma, just to check what the deal was here, and yeah, I think this is supposed to be like an ascension thing, not a hey, Earth is terrible, get out of here kind of nonsense. Now that said, there's a whole bunch of other cool stuff that was going on here as well. So a fun note, we were going over resistances last time. So did you know that some of the highest overall resistance values that you can get versus people is this janky setup right here? So this is about 5 points off from the actual theoretical maximum. Shield-wise, you can get a slightly higher bonus off the Medusa shield, but this thing does +8 for human resistance. The Alluring Dress is the highest anti-human resistance in the game. The 8 off the Bronze Helm is just a couple points off from... what was that? I think it was one of the helmets? Yeah, I think it was the Skull Mask, but the Skull Mask isn't a Bronze +1, so that gets to go here. And then you get 30 from every of the weapons, so yeah. This is a total of 61 to a theoretical 65% damage reduction against just all people entirely, and this is before the anatomy defense bonus, not to mention any other defenses. You are functionally laughing in the face of all people at that point, while looking like a complete dork. So there's that. Yeah, so there's that. Next up, we have the another interesting kind of background thing I was testing around with while waiting. I completely forgot that, yeah, you can actually get anatomy to a theoretical +14 using this particular kind of setup. You can actually technically also do this with the Ambition if you need a build to use it on. However, this one would objectively be better. Yeah, this guy is hilariously busted before even ranking anything up. If you're wondering about some of these messed up builds, by the way, this was technically a one vision save before I started messing around with it. This is kind of my just screw around with stuff save. Next cool thing here. So one thing I couldn't help but notice is that you kind of get what looks very, very similar to the Fencer setup from OB64. That specifically is the Stinky set. Now, most folks that went through OB64 can probably agree the Fencer wasn't terribly good. I mean, even the Swordmaster arguably wasn't amazing. But, yeah, I just can't help but notice the stuff that looks just like what the Fencer would have used. I mean, granted, this looks more like a proper, full-on fencing setup rather than a, well, I guess, I forget the name of it right now, but, like a Japanese sword kind of situation. But yeah, they specifically didn't make this into a katana, interestingly enough. Like, instead of a bamboo sword training, like proper, you got all the bamboo swords and different martial arts and whatever else, which, by the way, them suckers hurt. But yeah, instead it's a one-handed sword for whatever reason, which tends to be the kinds of stuff you see swordmasters running around with. Yeah, they use a two-handed sword, but I mean, in terms of like Western versus Eastern style swords, that they use in OB64. So yeah, I don't know if this was meant to be throwing shade at OB64, because yeah, the thing that looks just like the Fencer set just happens to make them so stinky nobody wants to actually go near them, functionally making them invisible. It's a very weirdly specific set bonus, I gotta say. So then, aside from that, I was kind of curious to see what would happen if you went for full dark, and funnily enough, yeah, you can go for a full dark build that looks as dumb as this. This is probably the worst absurdly overpowered build you can put together, but okay. Yeah, there's a lot of options for that. Getting back on track now. Okay, so one of the ones I wanted to cover over here is the interesting thing behind a lot of the movement types in the game, because there's a lot of them that have a whole lot of little quirks to them that are really fun for messing around with in challenge runs, but they might seem incredibly useless on a normal strategy front. And in fact, everything about this game, I really should have mentioned it the first time, everything about it is balanced as an RPG. In many cases, like a tabletop RPG, where you have so many tools, and, eventually somebody's gonna bring a friggin' lighter to a laser gun fight and be like, hey, how can I make this work? So yeah. Like the Ring of Clouds here, Cloudwalk, objectively terrible, on paper anyway. So Cloudwalk is essentially hover. For those that didn't know how it actually works, it isn't just that it makes you hover over gaps. It actually moves your entire movement type to be one tile higher. Additionally, I believe if there's traps on the ground, you don't trigger them, although, you know, in vanilla, that's, yeah. But on top of that, you actually can't cross all gaps unless you can actually get all the way across. Although, funnily enough, yeah, if this runs out, you're plummeting to your death. That's the thing. While it does allow, in some cases, that you can just kind of stand out there in the open, if you do run out, or if somebody hits you with a Dispel, instant death. So that's just kind of a funny touch there. However, and actually, it's funny because if you're using Water Walk and you get Dispelled, you also fall in the water. However, the one exception is the Spark Guard Ring, because they didn't apparently want to create a situation where your unit would get instantly boiled to death in lava. I know, for all the other dark stuff, that's where they draw the line. So, personally, I would have thought that they would just make them fall through the lava and just instant death or something, but no. If you get Dispelled on lava, you will still be able to walk on the lava in order to run off of it. So yeah, if you ever want to have infinite access to a walking type that nobody else can use, definitely use Lava Walk. It's definitely a lot more useful than it potentially seems. I personally end up insulting this one all the dang time, because, you know, there's like 3 maps with lava, but potentially there's a lot of opening there for abuse. Like, I was thinking back on it, and you know what? On the solo, at some point, I really should have just gone and just put the longest bow that I had availability for at the time. Yes, I know I banned longbows for that run, but whatever. Then just put on a Spark Guard Ring and run to the corner of the map and just sniped everything in the final Nimith fight. But, oh well. You know, a fun thing to potentially play around with. These stats across the board are god-awful, but, you know, it's there. Reaver Ring, for those that didn't know, you can actually... This is the one piece of equipment that you can actually steal in the game. Everything else is crafting materials or class marks. Plus, this upgrades your steel pretty significantly. Unfortunately, you have to have it all the way up to rank 3. That is easily several hundred uses of steel to get to that point, but it is the only way to get a free boon of swiftness on a lot of characters. That's actually not really the main benefit of this thing. It's having stop proof on a ring. That's arguably its biggest benefit, because its stats aren't great. Boon of swiftness, you can just get that off of scrolls at any point. Steel plus 2, I mean, leveling steel is, well... arguably the only reason you'd ever do it is to get this ring. But yes, stop proof, pretty solid, actually. City Ring, or She Ring, is apparently it's supposed to be pronounced. Thank you, really weird Merlin show for correcting that one on me. But yeah, so this one, Blink Walk, if you didn't know, is objectively worse than flying in every possible way, because it is still affected by movement issues. So, for example, instead of giving you plus 32 on your movement, you only get plus 8. So you can't always go vertically as far as you want. Additionally, if there's anything in the way, like, for example, if you're leadened, or if you're leadened, your up and down is still affected. If you're going and trying to get past Rampart Aura, it won't work, because apparently that knight is looking so intimidating that you're just going to forget how teleportation works, and in general, it's objectively worse. However, there's like 2 or 3 maps in the game you can actually warp through walls. Not all classes can do it, and I know in One Vision it was a lot easier because there's a lot more movement options available, but there's oftentimes the assumption that you can't get through walls simply because, well, you don't have enough movement to do so. You can't teleport into the wall, but if you do have enough movement to get to the other side, yes, you can absolutely teleport through walls. Funnily enough, it looks like Rampart Aura does actually affect tiles that don't technically exist, so if those are in the way and potentially affecting that wall is too intimidating for you to go through. Don't question it, it's just tactics ogre logic. Moving on, for the Winged Ring here, yeah, still terrible stats. However, having the ability to fly is pretty amazing. Moving on. So we covered this last time. But yeah, Elemental Chokers, it doesn't necessarily say this. It says that it gives you 40% resistance to a particular element. However, it also gives you about a 30% increase in all damage from that type. So right here we got a Storm Choker. Basically, it's going and... actually, wait a minute. This one doesn't even have any... Yeah. We got light and we got earth this lady's carrying around. But it'll boost all damage from that particular thing. So they had attempted to try and balance this a little bit. It's like right here we go to Dust Choker. You can see how much that's boosting up their defense, and I don't think they even have Augment Earth equipped, yet they're still getting another 120 extra damage off the dang thing. That's because, yeah, it's 30% scaling across the board, which tends to go pretty nuts. Additionally, again, just to reiterate this from last time, they attempted to balance them out by causing all of the weapon options to give you a 30% damage resistance against everything. And additionally also attempted to scale up, like these damage types. You get additional damage scaling for that particular damage type, as compared to the 30% over here. You're basically getting a 30% damage resistance kind of situation, as well as about a 2% increase to damage on top of your weapon bonus that you're getting here. So it's like a +8 to attack, plus another 9 to attack score, so yeah, you're getting about 17 to your damage threshold. You're technically getting another 9 defense and extra health. There is an argument to be made between these two. Like, generally speaking, if we're talking just single hit potential, these are... they scale like crazy. Dexterity is crazy. That was probably a typo on somebody's part, because they seem like they tried to, to balance it out, but couldn't quite get there. Alright, so next up, for those that didn't know, actually speaking of weapon skills and things like that, if you've ever wondered what the deal was, where, for example, you go into a fight and you see somebody that they're like, you know, they got daggers, bows, and they're equipping fists, right? So what's the deal there? Well, it turns out oh yeah, I forgot, ninjas can't equip fists in this one. What's the deal? I don't know. That one I'll never understand. It's the only time in the entire series where ninjas can't equip fist weapons. Anywho, so what I was trying to get across here. So, when it came to weapon skills and things like that, the game doesn't actually lock in weapon types in most situations. So, like, in a lot of cases, it just seems like they have a weapon skill that they can't actually use, so why is that there? Well, basically, they give them 2 weapons of the same kind, and this kind of semi-randomizes the game, because they will spawn all their equipment and whatever else, again, with a few exceptions where it's locked in, based off of those skills, based off what's available in their equipment pool at the time, as well as what's just kind of, you know, in vogue, so to speak, across the game at that point. So, for example, at one point, you know, you may see somebody coming in with extra daggers, because suddenly there's, you know, Valiant's daggers giving them +1 on daggers. Suddenly they're more likely to come in with those, whereas that same guy might have had a 2-hander earlier. It's just, there's all kinds of, like, little changes in the spawns, and it's kind of the game's way of randomizing itself, so to speak. Like, it just creates new types of challenges for you every time you go through. So if you ever thought it was fully randomized, it's not. All of the skills are all locked in, and they each have 2 different templates per each map, except for the DLC maps, which have 1, which are locked in at a certain level. And basically the way it goes is just it uses the first one as on the low end, and then uses the higher one on the higher end. There's like a breakpoint in the middle, and then after you get into World and New Game Plus and all of that, it just triggers it so that all of them can scale up to your level. But you still have to reach that 1 level breakpoint for them to fully rank up everything. So, for example, that's why in Vanilla here, if you go to Tynemouth, in most cases, you'll see guys running around with, like, rank 1 stuff up until you get into about the 20s. Then they'll be running around with rank 4, but they'll still only have their weapon skill. Anywho, so just a fun little spawn information on that one. Now, next thing, the spells. So, this one's really fun, because... like, I appreciate the sheer balls of whoever decided to make it this way. So you know how, like, if we look at the skills here, we have the witch, which suddenly got mixed with the siren, and then we have the enchantress, which got mixed with the witch, and it's like, what happened? Like, I know you wanted to create a you want to have a gender option for everybody, but what happened here? So, funnily enough, they did kind of successfully merge all of them in a very interesting way. Because you may have noticed, yeah, the Enchantress is from OB64, it's just your main attack option. Whereas they basically got combined with a wizard, so your main attack option, wizard or magic-wise, for the male side of things. However, the witch is supposed to be running around throwing out stuns and charms and sleeps and everything. So how did they get around this little thing? Well, they made it so that whenever you had a essentially attack style, caster or whatever else, they had a preference in their AI towards building equipment that would give them a lot of intelligence bonus. However, if they had a bunch of, for example, if they needed to be a witch in the original game, they created them so that they would have a very high magic accuracy bonus for their debuffs, creating a situation where, yes, you had some casters that were actually going for damage as they would have in the original, and other ones that were going for debuffs as they would have in the original. But that's why you get this weird, janky layout of different skills, because they all know all of them, but it's all based on the AI and their spawns as to which ones they'll actually prefer, which, I mean, I don't want to know how much aspirin the guy that had to balance all this came from, or went through, but, yeah. I just appreciate that that's a thing, It's like, we need you to just mash together, 4 different classes, and we need them to all function like they did in the original. Okay, go. Oh, man, that guy probably wanted to retire real quick, but I just thought it was really fun. It's really cool to see that way. And anyway, moving on here. Another one, speaking of weird magic-y stuff, let's talk about exorcisms. So if you didn't know, there's multiple different exorcism states, as it were, which, by the way, we gotta correct this guy for the correct version here. But yeah, there's multiple exorcism versions, and multiple ways that they can potentially play out. What do I mean by that? Well, sorry, got a little distracted by putting items on here. So, for example, let's say you have a skeleton, right? And you have right in your very intro, you have that situation where he tries to use exorcism on him, and the dang thing fails because that's not how it works anymore. Because yes, you have your standard ones, you knock them down, you use an exorcism, okay, done deal. However, things like orbs will actually vaporize them on use, so if they end up getting killed by that thing, it will vaporize them. However, Radius is the top tier of it. Right under that, you have the old Starfall abilities that you get on Warlocks and things like that. They can vaporize if they're already on the ground. However, they can't exercise them if they're currently still standing, so it would take using it twice to actually take them out. And on top of that, apparently, and I haven't tested this one, and I keep forgetting to test this one because it's so goddamn specific, is going to be the Sanctuary skill. So I've been told by multiple sources that, yeah, if you use Sanctuary and you stand next to a unit that's been downed, the whole use of something like Sanctuary Shadow or whatever else is essentially to say, hey, that thing can't revive anymore. Supposedly they can't actually revive if they're within that bubble. Again, I take that one with a grain of salt because I haven't tested it, because I always constantly forget to test it. Sorry about that, but I just thought it's really cool if it's true. Even if it isn't, though, if you get rank 2 of it, you can still put a Sanctuary Shadow right next to them. Suddenly they can't move anywhere. Alright, next cool thing is going to be right over here. Hopefully we have everything available in the store to actually show this. Didn't test it beforehand. Well, we don't have everything to show it, but it's alright. At least some of it is here. So if you didn't know, yeah, so stuff like getting iron ore and what have you, you get some of these random raw materials when you're going and you're selling off beast units. And at first it might seem like this is kind of random. It's a little bit of a strange choice to, be going and getting these random ore chunks when you can just go craft them. Okay, it saves you a little bit of time, but I don't think you're going to be going and, farming all these different beasts and whatever else to make that happen. What if I told you there's even a referential, world-building point to that, too? Because what do you see here? What kind of stuff are you constantly seeing available on all these thrown weapon types? They're all taking copper, iron, and graphite. Because you know what? You would never need, mass graphite, yet for some reason, I think it's octopi, it's either octopi or golems or something, that actually will give you graphite as one of the new things that are given in the store that you'd have to build otherwise. This blew my mind when I first found it, because, yeah, if you're going and you're using throwing weapons, they are a pain in the neck to constantly mass build, because they're just annoying like that. But if you're going about it this way, where you're basically taking the situation where... Here, sorry, let me go down to these ones here. Where, like, let's say you have a Beastmaster that's specializing in throwing weapons and whatever else, which is, for some reason, what they decided to go with for this one. Like, they're supposed to be, like, hunting javelins and things like that. Yeah, their upgrades come from the beast materials that you end up going and getting from the beasts that they're selling, which, functionally speaking, given the high ratings of some of the Beastmasters that you find out in the wild and whatever else, like how high their actual like teratology and beast boosting abilities and things like that are, reasonably speaking, it's fair to assume that they've been essentially making a living off of going and recruiting beasts and selling them, and then going and potentially getting their upgrades this particular way. Now, yes, you don't really see them running around with +1 throwables. That is a player-only thing, but I just thought it was a really cool touch, you know? It always seemed random to me, like, so many things about this game. It's just, it seems so random at first, and then it's like, oh, hey, you know what? There was a complete point to that, so I thought that was pretty cool. All right. Next up, in terms of oddly specific crap nobody would ever possibly have a use for, we have over here. Did you know, if you go over to your inventory, you can sell stuff from here? You sell it for half price, so there's pretty much no point to ever do this, because why would you ever need money if you're not already at a store? But you can do that from your inventory. Now, I think this is only here for A, setting up challenge runs, and B, for basically allowing the game to do its whole, like, your converted items, or your excess items have been converted into money thing. But yeah, and also, if you didn't know, you can actually sort them all here as well. You, just to say how you do it, you go to this, you pick on any item, you double-click X, and there you go. You have your menu right here. Which, speaking of other menu functions that you didn't know about, you ready to have your mind blown? You can resort these. You can resort your spell list at any point. You can have anything you want wherever the hell you want. This is how they're going to show up in battle now. Did you know that? Because I know I didn't know that for the longest friggin' time. It took over, I think it was like 9.5 years until, again, Rakes just mentioned this one day. He's like, hey, you do know that you can just resort those, right? I'm like, wait, what? I can do that? So yeah, that's cool too. Another thing, actually, speaking of stuff that you'd probably never pay attention to that's right here the whole time. Well, I mean, obviously we have the Chaos Frame JPEG. That's all well and good. But if we go over to, not titles, if we go to this little play guide down here, yeah, there's quite a lot in here, actually, you may potentially have missed. But yeah. Lots of neat things here, but also, did you know it actually tells you how to trigger Coda? It tells you what the actual requirements are for each of these chapters and whatever else. And yeah, it does specifically mention the whole Cashmo must be in your party and alive thing. They did make a mistake on episode 3 because you don't know that. You can't know to trigger this until you've already triggered it. They tried, but yeah. You only get this one until you actually get out of Palace of the Dead, and then they say, oh, hey, guess what? Like, if she's alive, you can trigger this. They needed to have this trigger a little bit sooner, like maybe each of these needed to come 1 moment sooner. But yeah, it's just cool that it's here, you know? They tried, it was a little bit off, but hey, what have you. Another thing that I feel like a lot of folks don't realize is, yeah, monsters can be stepping stones. You can use them to get around. Potentially another great use for monster units there. All right, and next up, in terms of, again, oddly specific crap that, who knows, let's go over here. So you know all this, like, alluring stuff and whatever else, like, you got all your dresses and things and whatnot. You know who you get the boots from? Because I saw a lot of forum posts specifically wondering where you get the boots. And by the way, 15 luck on each of these. If you could combine that with the where is it, with the Daedalus, like, hot dang, you're at that point you're just running around with potentially up to actually, how high is the luck ring in this one? I think it was plus 20, wasn't it? Yeah, Band of Fortune was plus 20. So, yes, potentially 65 bonus luck. You're just maxed out luck at that point. Anyway, so, for those that didn't know, first, I guess like Mitsuna specifically has something against Puss in Boots or Antonio Banderas. I'm not sure. In some interview, he said the only reason that Goosen, so that's the Man-at-Arms, who's actually a ninja guy, which, by the way, a Man-at-Arms, technically speaking, could be anybody. It's literally just a soldier guy that showed up in armor with a weapon that's there to serve somebody. Anyway, for some reason, he drops these in his high-level version, and if you're wondering, again, about a lot of drops, most of them trigger in their quote-unquote high-level version, so I'd like to call it New Game Plus mode, but it's just kind of like post-level 25 in most cases, or post-30. So yeah, people were asking what's the deal with him dropping the high boots, because a lot of the other like alluring stuff comes from Oz, because he's apparently secretly a crossdresser. He said he had a duel with Puss in Boots and won. Or he specifically put it weird, like he had a duel with a cat whose name was Antonio Banderas or something. It's you know what, whatever. I'm not going to question it. All right. So next thing on the list here, actually probably should have gone for the other save file for this, but and in fact we're gonna go ahead and do so. Let me go ahead and save this one so we can go back to it. Let's go to this one right here. Is this the right one? That is not the right one whatsoever. Well, I guess fine. I'll just go ahead and load it manually if we're gonna be that way. There we go. So it's actually what I did with my two casters right here. But if you ever thought, hey, there's no use in giving casters daggers, especially early on, well, the Balders and the Damasks are actually pretty solid. Like the Balders give them an intelligence bonus, not to mention give a massive bonus to undead, to the point that they can actually legitimately be viable fighters in Palace of the Dead. However, the Damask, I like to think of it as a taser, because, yeah, you can kind of counter-stun, and that's pretty solid. Now, that said, how on earth are they getting rank ups? What's the deal with that? How do you gain rank ups on somebody that you're never supposed to have in the front line? That's because you don't put them in the front line. See, what you do is you take your daggers. Typically, you take your crappy ones, like your absolutely basic ones from way over here. Take a ye old sticker over here with its absolutely no power whatsoever. Actually, its attack power is so low that it can barely get past the robes that they're wearing. If we take a look at these defenses right here, yeah, the 26 defense off the robe, 20 off the hat, 18 off the shield. Realistically, they're getting, let's see, 68 with this one. I mean, that's going to go through just fine. The sticker, no, it's gonna lose all of its damage very quickly. Fun thing is, yeah, if they can actually equip counter. So the funny thing with that is, actually I don't believe I have counter on them anymore, is because, yeah, all you have to do is you have them sit there and take swings at each other over and over and over and over and over and over again. Actually, wait a minute, they can't get counter, can they? Wait a minute. Well, either way, you just take swings with them over and over. I'm thinking of OV for the counter thing. It's fine. I believe you can actually transfer over. Let me double check if you can transfer over counter. Because I do remember one point where they would repeatedly counter each other over and over and over. Alright, counter one. Let's see where that is. Nope, that'd be a hard no on that one. What about... yeah, where's counter one at? I know one of you has to have counter one somewhere. No, apparently they can't have it. So, yeah, I'm not sure what I was thinking on that one. But yeah, you can just have them take swings at each other over and over. Trains it up very fast. If you didn't know, when it checks for weapon skills, because you might see that, yeah, their ranks are just about the same here. When it checks for weapon skills, and when it checks for experience to hand out entirely, all it's checking for is that the thing in question has actually participated in any way. So if somebody's swinging a dagger, they're like, oh, experience drop. Oh, hey, I'm swinging a dagger too. Oh, hey, experience drop. So the two are swinging at each other and essentially getting experience on both ends. So fastest way to do that, and yeah, with the stickers and things like that, you can just... hell, you can have them just do support. For the longest time, all I did with these two is I would basically have her running around throwing out Quench and Stagnate if needed, as well as him throwing out Protect or Blade Ward as needed. All the rest of this stuff didn't really matter too much. Petrifog, Dust Storm as it was needed. I personally feel Earth Warlocks are probably some of the best, but yeah, Like, I just had these two playing around. I usually just pick random elements for my two casters. It's usually a 2+1 that I like to do, because you have your two main ones, and then you pick up one of the story ones later. But I just thought that was really cool. Alright, so moving on here. Funnily enough, on this particular save file I was talking about, I saw a guy that was going to go recruit all of the Berts in the game, because there's a hell of a lot of Berts, and so I saw two Philippes, and I was like, hey, I'll get all the Philippes, and so happened to recruit two Philippes. Only ever ran into those two, but, you know. That is how it does, I guess. Alright. Next up, what else we got on the list? Okay, so Flash Gordon references. Anyone potentially unaware? Yeah, all the Hawkmen as it is entirely. There's supposed to be a Flash Gordon reference, like ye old Flash Gordon from way back in the day. There's more to that though, because okay, the Hawkmen themselves, fine, that's a reference right there. The Vartan is actually it originally was Voltan, which apparently that was enough to potentially be lawsuit worthy, so they took that out of there. And by the way, I'm running a cheat right now that allows anyone to change into any class, which is why stuff is looking a little funky right here. But yeah, so the Vartan is essentially an even more potentially direct reference to that one. That said, further, Angel Knights, I have a theory, are also meant to be yet another reference to it, because in Flash Gordon, you basically have a bunch of Hawkmen flying around with laser guns, just blasting stuff away. And what exactly do the Angels do? They fly around and blast stuff with lasers. So, you know, there's that. Another little fun thing there. Another thing, actually completely not related whatsoever to what I was just talking about. And by the way, when I was doing the tier list where I was talking about the Double Strike Lombardia Warrior guy, that's this guy. But if you didn't know, when it came to stuff like Petrify and Leaden, they have pretty weird effects on your movement, like Leaden. If there's flying units, the reason that they have Feather Step to get rid of it is because, yeah, it prevents them from flying entirely. So it's kind of like a counter-flying move. Not to mention, it's oftentimes overlooked that it actually reduces your evasion against all things by about 40%, which is pretty nutso. Additionally, Petrification, while it does have its whole, pretty much making magic bounce off property, it has another funny thing in that, yeah, in both cases, if they're active when you get knocked off a cliff, yeah, you're just falling off that cliff regardless of what options you potentially would have to save you, except for one, and that's teleportation. Like, it's funny because, yeah, literally all the other ones end up getting disabled under that circumstance. But, yeah, Flight gets disabled even though it's objectively better. The one time the teleportation is better is if you're leadened, and then you can just warp back. So, that's kind of cool there. Additionally, also not really related to anything, but there's usually the thing of, like, hey, crafting is impossible, what's the deal with that? Yeah. Your base stats, your highest base stats of all kinds of different things in the party actually determine your crafting success rate. So, for example, if I were to go over here and let's say, man, where's Coffee Tater? That's the one that I need to find. Which, by the way, these ones, this is a weird emulation glitch that happens. And I was talking to somebody through that earlier. Come to think of it, I wonder what happened with them. I hope they're okay. Hope they got it figured out. But okay. Sorry, I'm trying to find my my solo save, wherever that thing's at. But for some reason, it is being very weird right now. Like, this emulator in particular is all kinds of jank, and I'm not entirely sure why. Alright, let's try that load again. See if it can manage to understand that I'm attempting to actually look at the save files, not just imagine they exist. No? Alright, apparently this is just what we're doing right now. Alright, pardon the emulation issue, but yeah, the higher your base stats, the better everything goes. What I was trying to show was the solo that I did a little while ago, in which, yeah, the guy had hundreds across the board, and, well, the crafting rates were pretty decent. Alright. Next up, another cool one that I forgot to cover last time is actually going to be in regards to bows. Now, you know how archers and stuff like FFTA had different skills, like the same ones that the FFT engineer had, where it was like aiming for the arm or aiming for the leg? Well, you may notice that the Siege Bow and Ixcamilies, arguably two of the ones that you're going to be using for quite a while, happen to have both of those effects. However, their odds are fairly low, until you take into account for the fact that, archers have their guaranteed hit ability, which means that both of those are going to be guaranteed hits. I don't know if that was an intentional reference, but I just thought it was kind of cool there regardless. Alright, what else? Oh yeah, so another KOL reference that I keep forgetting, even despite the fact that it's super obvious. So let me find one here. We need a skill at rank 8, real quick. Now, does this guy have rank 8 of anything right here? Why not? Okay, we need to go for one of the... Actually, no, there is one in this party that has a rank 8, and that would be Ozma. So, you know the symbol that you see in Knight of Lotus as soon as you get an emblem? Well, would it by any chance happen to look like a little gold star that suddenly shows up? Because, yeah, I never thought about it before. Yeah, you could say it's just, it's a generic gold star, why not? But okay, the fact that they use that exact thing for, achievements like that in multiple cases, I don't know. I think it has to be a reference to that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't help but notice that a lot of the same things have it. Like, for example, if you end up maxing out Lament of the Dead, it's a hell of a lot like, I believe it's War God that you get for Knight of Lotus, where it's basically the Terranite effect on anybody. So, just a bit of a thought there. Additionally, there's another one we're going to look at right here. Because, like me, many of you might have gone through several runs of the game and thought, what on earth is the actual role of axes here? What are they doing? Well, funny thing. Go down the list of every axe that you can find. And you potentially find a interesting theme running down all of them. And by the way, we'll cover that two-hander thing here in just a moment. And there's a reason I had this guy built as he was. Now, what do you see? Vitality, 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 agility, vitality, 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 strength, vitality. Yeah, just that across the board. It's always giving you defensive bonuses. Which is kind of funny because that's kind of the total opposite of how axes would typically function, but whatever. It's just kind of a funny thing there. That, yeah, these are kind of meant to be a defensive one, but only slightly, right? However, there is one other thing to consider. Because, well, if you have axes, what's their first finisher? In most cases, many of the first finishers in the game are typically the ones that the game expected you to get. Your first and second one are the ones that you typically have equipment for. Like, the third and fourth ones are usually, like, if you've gotten to that point, whatever. We don't care anymore. Your guy's basically a god at that point. But axes in particular have one thing that hard counters knights a lot of the time. And oh no, my computer's about to choke and die again. Dang it! That is really annoying. Okay, so what do knights do that's very annoying throughout a lot of the game? And I'm not talking about phalanx. Funnily enough, there's a counter to that too. Actually, juggernauts are meant to be the main counter to knights and their phalanxes with their intimidate move. It's specifically made to remove that kind of stuff. But the funny thing with axes is, yeah, they come with a silencing finisher as their very first one, with a decent chance of actually landing. Because all of those extra heals and, debuff removals and things like that tend to be one of their more annoying features. So it's pretty cool to see that as kind of like a little counter knight move there, as it were. Additionally, it's kind of interesting to see how two-handers, while, they have some pretty niche stuff going on through most of the game, it's funny to note that they actually have one of the earliest cases of a finisher that can scale at the same type as its weapon. Now, you see this a hell of a lot in One Vision, because that's how you get your big numbers in that one. But yeah, the Grass Hewer, you can get that, arguably the Grass Hewer and your Notos, they're going to be some of the earlier versions of, crazy same element scaling and whatever else. But yeah, you can get both of them. Well, the Notos is a massive pain in the neck to get, but the Grass Hewer is relatively easy to get. You've probably gone through Farampa a few times. You might have already gotten the book on accident, and that's where you get this one. That's where suddenly your Thunderstrike move actually becomes somewhat good. Because, yeah, two-handers are this weird thing where all of their finishers, they're kind of the same, really. They don't really have anything special going on with them except for elemental scaling. And the Notos, while it can affect the earliest one, is unfortunately one of those ones that's very difficult to get a hold of. You don't get your light scaling until the Durandal over there. However, you do get your... what does the third one actually scale with? I believe the third one was wind also, wasn't it? Because that's Cyclone Saber, isn't it? I think Cyclone Saber might be neutral. I'm not 100% certain. But speaking of other interesting finishers, in fact, actually, no. I think Cyclone Saber was the wind one, and then I believe Sonic Blade might have been neutral. Let me double check if I have that skill assigned to anyone. All right, you have it. Easy to check right here. So yeah, Sonic Blade is neutral. Cyclone Saber is wind, and then Grand Cross is lightning as well. So potentially both of those can be very strong. Funny thing, by the way, Sonic Blade. Now, it does make sense for it to be a wind move in one vision, but for anyone that didn't catch it, this is actually yet another Ogre Battle reference, because the special move and special weapon for Debonair, aka the Diva of the Wind, is the Sonic Blade there. Another cool thing on that, by the way, speaking of the earlier Brahma thing, where was it? This one. Apparently, Brahma is actually the inspiration behind the four divas, although it was originally like the four Debas or something like that, and it's just like this four-faced floating god thing that just farted out demigods or something. I'm definitely explaining that wrong, but, you know, that's kind of there as it is. Alright. Next up, the Farampa skeletons. For anyone that didn't know, your overall chaos frame is what determines what's going on with those three skeletons in Farampa. So if you head over this way, 2 maps in this direction, it's like right up above this one. There's 3 skeletons, and depending on your chaos frame, that'll be the thing that determines whether or not they're actually fighting on your side or against you. And if they're on your side, no matter what you do, they will continue to be on your side. You can literally just attack them the whole time, they just won't care. I don't know what exactly about the chaos frame decides this, but something about it does, because it tends to be pretty consistent once you get a save file going like this. Additionally, for those that didn't know, since we're at an area where you could have gotten early class marks before, the first time that you run into most classes in the game, you have a nigh guaranteed chance to actually get 3 copies of that class mark. So, for example, say you're going down Chaos, the first time that you have that Vice fight and you run into a Dragoon, if you kill off that first Dragoon that's standing next to the Cyclops, there's a very, very, very high chance that she's going to drop her 3 class marks. In your very first Sistina fight, that Beastmaster will almost always drop those 3 class marks. It's basically, if they were going to drop a bag, they're guaranteed to drop their 3 marks. So more than likely, I would say it's like a solid 80% chance that that's going to end up happening. Additionally, speaking of weird stuff here, I mentioned there's one interaction I didn't mention earlier, and that was between, well, speaking of death-related effects and Sistina here, difference between poison and sleep. So if you didn't know, if anyone's poisoned, they can no longer be put to sleep while they're having that. So if you ever have issues with units getting put to sleep, and you don't have any way to conveniently make them sleep-proof, just go ahead and let them get poisoned. They will have too much of a fever to fall asleep. I have a feeling there must have been a developer story behind that where they just like came into work sick. It's like, dude, I cannot sleep. We have to put this into the game. I'm sorry. Which, another funny thing, if you didn't know, so Earth Dragons through the series have generally been the ones with the poison effect. However, it seems to be both a combination of OB64 alteration as well as mythology reference, that the Hydras in this one actually do like a unique type of poison breath. Yeah, it seems to be a reference to the Lyurian Hydra, but just kind of fun there. Alright, next up, yeah, we already covered the Ogre Blade renaming scheme last time. That mess is just kind of hilarious. So Star Wars references, another one that I've covered in articles before, but haven't really covered in a video too much. If you didn't catch it, in both versions, Habarim is meant to look like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of that particular time period. So, for example, he looked a whole lot like the original version back in the SNES game, and in this one he's meant to look a lot like the prequel version. So presumably, if they ever make a remake, well, I mean, he's probably just going to look like a pile of ashes, won't he? Anyway, so Crumpled... actually, wait a minute. That was Night... You know what? That was Night of Lotus right there. The crumpled up heap that turns into a boss. There we go. There's another Star Wars reference for you. But no, there's actually a few others as well, but the most obvious being the Brynhildr, which is, like, if you've ever seen the old Star Wars posters, it's literally exactly the way that they have that portrayed. It's never shown like this a lot of the other times. It's just like this weird Christmas tree situation. This thing is a straight-up lightsaber. Anyway, there's actually a few others as well, but I'm not remembering them off the top of my head right now, because, well, I know a few things about Star Wars, but I mostly played the games. I don't know all the deep lore and stuff about that particular one. Alright, is there anything else on the list, because my time is about done here? I mean, I think that about covers what I meant to cover for now. I'm saving the whole rest of the list, because there's inevitably going to be more of them. But yeah, so that's about that for now. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll be waiting for more feedback on these. And yeah, probably expect a part 3 or 4 at some point, because yeah, there's going to be quite a lot to this. Oh, by the way, just a random note, actually, before I forget. Like, another one of these cases of, like, something being low-key a favorite, despite it arguably not being super optimal or anything. Yeah, cudgels are these the Damask maces over here. Not bad at all. They're kind of fun to play with. Actually, the Baldurs and Damasks are shockingly good, all things considered. So yeah, if you ever made a warrior unit with a Damask mace, it's actually pretty dang solid. And I mentioned earlier, by the way, with this anatomy bonus thing, it's like 14 anatomy. Yeah, this guy, even without any rank ups, 908 out of 999 on each hand. Have you ever had gloves that were so racist that you just became a god? So, yeah. Anywho. Oh, I remembered one more. Okay, I know. I'll stop. But there's one more cool thing that I thought I'd mention. Speaking of historical references, if you ever thought, like, man, this is just like some anime crap right here, that the alluring dress and corset and whatever else are actually a piece of armor that's got some decent defenses on it. Yeah, well, guess what? Turns out, historically, that's a thing that happened. In fact, I was watching this thing the other day. Apparently some folks were actually even posting about it on the Discord, that sure enough, there were documented cases of women that were wearing corsets and things, like people attempted to stab them and stuff like that, and the knives broke off. So yeah, apparently, well, especially the steel, kind of steel versions, and then the whalebone versions, tended to be pretty dang good at the old protection thing, even though it didn't do so good on the whole not breaking the ribs thing. Anywho, just kind of a fun note there. Alright, so I gotta get going here. You guys have an awesome one. And yeah, let me know what you'd like to see in the next one. Take care.